G'day guys, welcome back to another edition of Sport Talk Podcast. And today we have no bigger of a person coming in today. Today we have Fox Footy reporter Tom Morris. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you, Blake. What a pleasure it is to be here, mate. I can see that you're a Tigers supporter.
Yes, that's correct. Bit unlucky this year, but I think we can. I think we can come back next year.
You've had enough. Enough luck. Don't worry about that. Three flags is a lot more than what many Richmond supporters thought they would have had in the last 4 years. So you've done very well.
Yes, that is correct. So the first question I want to ask: what's the interest that you have in journalism?
Yeah, strong interest. I mean, it's been my career now for almost 6 years. So in 2015, I was hired at Fox Footy, and I've always been interested in sports media. As you would know, and anyone who consumes sports media, the industry's changed a lot. You know, like even 15 years ago, there was no real digital presence. There wasn't really social media. There was television news, there was radio news, there was newspaper. And now we have this thing called the internet, which existed back then, but not in the fast-paced way it does now. So journalism has changed, and I've probably come in at a time when it's been changing rapidly, and I'm sure in 10 years' time, it'll be changing even quicker. But I don't just love sports journalism. I love all journalism. I love reading about what, not that I like the news itself, but I enjoy the coverage of what's happening in Afghanistan. I enjoy the coverage of what's happening in America. The COVID-19 coverage really interests me. And then the feel-good stories as well. So, yeah, journalism, I never knew I would be as into journalism as I am, but I think it's a key part of a democracy. Whether it's sport, politics, current events, entertainment, doesn't really matter. I just love consuming it, and that's probably why I work in the industry.
Yeah, good. What's the biggest footy story you have broken?
Good question, Blake. The biggest one I've broken is probably the Adelaide training camp in early 2018, I reckon. If you remember that the club went on a training camp to the Gold Coast, and there was some questionable activities there. It disenfranchised a lot of players. It actually disenfranchised some coaches as well. And what it turned the club on its head. The club was a basket case because the training camp eroded all trust among the players, and it saw Eddie Betts leave. It saw Hugh Greenwood leave, not in isolation, but part of the reason Eddie Betts left was because of that. Hugh Greenwood went to Gold Coast. Alex Keith went to the Western Bulldogs, and so on. And it was a debacle. So, you know, that was probably the first big footy story that I broke. And at the time, you know, people were saying, "Oh, he's talking crap," but in the end, I probably undersold it. I probably should have gone harder. It was you know, because other journalists came forward with facts and things that happened that were, you know, really quite disturbing for the players. So probably that. I mean, even yesterday was the first coach sacking I'd broken, with David Teague being sacked. I take no pleasure in a coach being sacked. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's terrible what Carlton's done to David Teague. Certainly the process of it, I think, has been terrible. But to break a coach sacking story is pretty big. So that was yesterday. So I don't know. You're always looking for the big fish, but they very rarely come along. So when you get a chance, you got to take it.
Yeah, of course. So back on the David Teague, it was obviously brewing for a couple of days, and you were obviously the first one to break the story. Can you talk us through the build up to that and how many message and calls you would have made to confirm the story?
Good question. Well, the build up was that it wasn't a surprise that he got sacked. You know, no one was shocked. So although it's good, although I say it's rewarding breaking a coach sacking, it's not like it was a sledgehammer where everyone went, "Whoa, I did not see that coming." You know, most people saw it coming, just didn't know when. So I'm not trying to pretend it's the biggest story of all time. It wasn't, but it was still nice to get it. Some stories you have to make lots of calls. Some stories you just make one call and you trust that source because that source is so close to the action. Other stories, it takes you days or weeks to get along. So the David Teague thing was brewing for a few days. I was pretty close to it. I was speaking to a few people that were closely involved. And in the end, I got the story on Thursday morning. But it certainly wasn't just like someone just giving me some charity. Like, I had to work hard for it in the days before. And it feels a little bit dirty doing that, because you feel like you're working hard for someone to be sacked. You're not barracking for them to be sacked. You don't want them to be sacked, but you think it's going to happen. That's the news story, and as a result, your job is to report it. So that's how it came about.
Yeah. And I hear you have a passion for cricket.
I do, probably more than footy, I reckon. I love footy, don't get me wrong. I'm looking forward to watching the Demons this weekend. I'm a Melbourne supporter. I was lucky enough to beat the grand final last year when your Tigers won. I was at the Gabba. And the few before then. Footy's awesome, but I love cricket. I love cricket. So, yes. Do you like your cricket?
Yeah, I play a bit, but I've stopped now. But, yeah, I used to love playing. I'm more of a watcher, not a player. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to sit in front of the TV and watch cricket. And I guess that comes because my mum's English. So I spent, a lot of my childhood playing cricket in the summer, soccer in the winter, early days, and then sort of transitioned into footy, I guess, when I was sort of maybe 10 or 11 because I had friends who played footy. But my two favourite sports from the ages of probably 4 to 10 were soccer and cricket. So, and I still love soccer, but footy, it's pretty hard not to love footy when you live in Melbourne.
Yes, it is the sporting capital. Talking about footy, also we got footy finals coming up. Of course, the big game is also Geelong versus Port Adelaide on yours truly, Fox Footy at 7:50 tonight.
Yes.
Can you talk us through the game? So there's two elite teams with some talent, of course. They would both be smarting about last year's losses to Richmond. Do you think that will be an impact for tonight's game?
Yeah, I think all year Geelong and Port Adelaide have been, and good for you to bring up those Richmond losses as well. I mean that prelim final was awesome in the wet when you managed to win by about a goal, I think it was.
Yeah, it was unreal.
And then it was unreal. Then we've spoken about the grand final. I think that all year they've been motivated by the chance to win a flag after just missing out last year. I mean, they got so close and they just missed out. And this is why tonight is such an intriguing contest, because neither can really afford to get on the wrong side of the draw. Get on the wrong side of the draw, you potentially play Melbourne in Perth in a prelim final for Demons win on Saturday night. Not wanting to get ahead of myself. So, and the reward is huge for Port. If they win, they get a home final in front of a crowd at Adelaide Oval in 2 weeks' time. That's what they had 2 years ago. Last year. But the difference is there's no Richmond. I don't think there's a clear standout. So it's going to be awesome. I'd love to give you a tip. I'm torn on this. My gut says that Geelong on paper is better, even without Tom Stewart. But I think Port Adelaide are playing better footy. So I always go on form. So if you had to push me one way or the other, I'd probably go Port to win. But I'm not overly confident on it. And I had a shocking year of tipping, so probably better not to listen anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'm going Port tonight too. I think it's under their fans. I think it's probably 20,000 Port Adelaide fans, you would think.
Yep.
No Geelong, obviously, because of COVID. So, anyway, you touched on about Tom Stewart. He's a huge out for the Cats, but do you think Duncan back brings more experience to the Cats?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big in, Duncan. I mean, I remember saying when he got injured, I think it was round 16, don't quote me on that, I said on Fox Footy, if this is an 8 to 12 week injury, 12 weeks would take him to prelim final or grand final week. 8 weeks would take him to the gap between the home and away season and finals. So in the end, there's no gap between the home and away season and finals. So his recovery, according to people at Geelong, and clearly has gone absolutely to plan, beautifully to plan. The challenge will be for Mitch Duncan if they lose backing up next week and going again, or if he gets a knock on it, or if you can't really replicate game intensity. So it is a risk for Geelong to play him, not against playing him. He's clearly good enough to be in the team. They would love him. They would love to win. Him have a week off. He can play a prelim and then be ready to go for a grand final if they make it. So he's a gun, Mitch Duncan. But Tom Stewart's a big loss. I mean, I think he's not their most important player, but he's in the top 2 or 3 most important players, Tom Stewart. He's All-Australian for a reason.
Yeah. Where would you think this game will be won? Do you reckon the midfield battle, the forward, back line? Where do you reckon it will be won tonight?
I mean, it's easy to say the midfield, but I'm most interested in how Tom Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron go up against Aaliyah and Tom Jonas. Aaliyah's had an unbelievable year after coming from the Swans.
He has.
His intercepting is great. I mean, he's a really good, talented player. But, Tom Hawkins has got form against Port. Tom Hawkins played, I think he 6 against Port last year. They just couldn't do anything to stop him. So I'm most interested in that. To me, Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins are the best 1-2 punch forward duo in the competition. And if they're on, Geelong are very hard to beat. Jeremy Cameron's inside 50 work, Tom Hawkins one-on-one work. So I'm interested to see how Port Adelaide defend that and how good the supply is to them. That's what I'm looking forward to watching most tonight.
Yeah, I also saw on Fox Footy today that I think last time Geelong played, they had Rowan, Cameron, and Hawkins, and I think they kicked 8 between them. So that's a bit of a worry for Port.
Yeah, I remember that game.
Yeah,
it is, and that game was in Adelaide as well. So I think we call it the three-headed monster. I mean, Gary Rowan is a classic player that he's better when others around him are better. So Hawkins and Cameron are on, Selwood, Dangerfield, these types. Then I reckon Gary Rowan's in for a big game. If those are slightly off, then Gary Rowan can go missing.
Yeah. So the other game we've got is the Swans and the Giants. The winner and why?
I'm going for the Giants. More so because the Swans have some key injuries. I think if both teams were full strength, I'm all about the Swans. Sorry, I'm all about the Giants. But what am I saying? If both teams were full strength, I'm all about the Swans, but they're not, so I'm all about the Giants. No Mills, no Blakey, no Kennedy. That's huge. And the Giants have some serious momentum. Like, they were awesome last week against the Bulldogs. They've been playing some good footy. So I'm backing the Giants. What about you?
I'm 50-50, but if I had to go for a winner, I would say what you said then, in recent form. Well, the Swans won by 85 points last week, so I think the Swans are good enough to win. But it is at a neutral ground, so I'll say the Giants because they've won 3 in a row or something like that, and they beat the Tigers.
Very good form. It could go either way. It could actually go either way. And Buddy's the wild card there, obviously. I'm looking forward to Buddy on Sam Taylor. That'll be awesome.
Yeah. Speaking of Buddy, do you reckon you'll get to 1,000 this year?
Well, based on my tip, no, because it means the Swans will lose and he won't get another week. And you know what? I don't want him to get to 1,000 this year. I want him to get to 1,000 early next year when everyone can run on the ground.
Yes.
So if he gets to 1,000 this year, I mean, it's probably irresponsible for them. I hate to say that. I don't want to be a spoil sport, but it's probably irresponsible for the crowd to run on the field given COVID situation. So I would want him to get there in round 1 next year at the SCG and all the stands be emptied by Swans fans running on the field.
Next game we've got is your beloved Demons up against the Brisbane Lions. Obviously, we know your winner, but why do you reckon they're going to win?
Well, I'm hopeful Melbourne's going to win. Melbourne's defence is so good. So I think Joe Danaher especially won't be as effective with May and Lever especially. Charlie Cameron's a bit of a worry. I wonder how we're going to man up on Charlie Cameron if Hibbert doesn't play. But I think Melbourne's midfield is ridiculous. Clayton Oliver, to me, along with Dusty Martin, is the perfect finals footballer. And probably Toby Green. They're the three. Like, Clayton Oliver's ability last week to win the footy 37 times against Geelong, he was so awesome. Petrarca's a gun. Max Gawn's an All-Australian. I just think Melbourne on paper are in a better position, but the Lions are dangerous. The Lions are very dangerous. The Lions score. The Lions can move the ball quickly. The Lions are probably frustrated that they lost last year and didn't make a grand final. So I wouldn't discount the Lions, but I'm certainly hoping and tipping Melbourne.
Yeah. Do you reckon the Big O has a huge task on Max Gawn tomorrow night?
Yeah, for sure. I love the Big O. I don't know about you. I love what he's done because he was like a community footballer, wasn't he? At what club was he at?
Yeah, he was at my local club.
VFL.
He played at my local club actually, just down at the Montrose Football Club.
What's the name of that club?
Montrose Footy Club.
Yeah, Montrose. So I did a couple of functions at Montrose, and probably about 2 or 3 years ago, and we had Big O as a guest. And he had hardly played a game by at this point with Gary, a guy called Gary organised it. Gary Felstead organised it.
Yes, he was the president. Yeah.
That's right. So anyway, we had big Oscar McInerney there and this skinny, lanky kid from Brisbane turned up and I interviewed him. I thought, this guy is not an AFL footballer. Like, anyway, he's grown into a very good footballer. I know he was a late developer. I mean, he was sort of plucked from obscurity, but good on him. even in saying that, Max Gawn is the best all-round ruckman in the league, and he's got a huge task in his hands. He's probably up to it, but all he's got to do is neutralise Max Gawn. Don't try to win the contest. Just make sure that Gawn isn't as effective as he otherwise is sometimes.
Yep. Do you think the pressure will get to the D's?
Well, oh God. I mean, I hope not. I don't think so. I feel like, look at this year's form. Melbourne has lost to teams, mostly, that are quite low on the ladder. So I feel like Melbourne has actually done well when the pressure's been on. So I don't think so. I think it might be a different story in a prelim or a grand final, but I don't think. I mean, they'll be nervous for sure, but they're used to the pressure by now. Like, they've got enough big game players. Played finals in 2018 and played really well for the first two finals. Got done by West Coast in a prelim. That'll help them. Clayton, as I said, Clayton Oliver's the perfect finals football. So I've got full faith in the D's, as much as that makes me nervous to say.
Yep. So the last game, of course, Western Bulldogs taking on the Essendon Bombers. Just saw then that Nick Hind is out. Do you think that's a big loss for the Bombers?
Yeah, huge loss. I saw that. Visited a Tier 2 exposure site last Saturday, a shopping centre, and that's been reclassified. So he can't play, and potentially he might be done for the rest of the finals or at least the week after if they win, because he won't be able to travel with the team or any of that sort of stuff. He's going to spend 14 days in hotel quarantine or isolation. So that's a big loss for the Bombers. I think the Bombers are a red hot chance here. I mean, I'm not brave enough to tip them just because I think the Dogs were in the top four most of the year. Essendon just stuck into the eight. So really, for probably 20 rounds this year, what you've got is the Western Bulldogs, a top two team, versus Essendon, who were a sort of a 10 to 14 team. That's what the pattern is over the entire year. Doesn't mean Essendon can't win because their form is good. They're playing some attacking, nice footy. Jake Stringer, as I said, as I haven't said, but he's a great finals footballer. Zach Merritt and Darcy Parish are all Australian. Nick Hind is a big loss, but I'm tipping the Dogs. I just reckon the Dogs will rebound after last week. They were pretty ordinary. And they've lost the last three, so they'd want to rebound. I'm tipping them. What about you?
Yeah, I reckon the Bulldogs. But what you said then, obviously you don't think the Bombers will break their drought, and do you reckon Jake Stringer will torment his old side?
I think Jake Stringer is an unbelievable player. I can't believe he didn't make the All-Australian team. He's been the best player in the comp since the bye. Yeah, I'd be happy if either team win, to be honest. I think the Western Bulldogs are more likely to go deep, but I'd like Essendon to break their drought. I think they've done incredibly well to turn it around in the last 11 months. They were a basket case 11 months ago. So I don't really mind I don't really care who wins. I just want it to be a good game of footy. And I think Stringer, a lot rests on Stringer. He's a goal-kicking midfielder who's a strong body. They're hard to come by. Hopefully he can kick a couple and torment the Dogs. Yes.
Do you feel like the Bulldogs can win without Bruce? Like, I know he's a massive loss. Like, he's kicked he's the leading goal kicker, of course, but yeah. I feel like the Dogs are feeling, a little bit lost without Bruce.
Completely agree. I don't think they can win it. No, I think they're done. Hey, if I'm wrong, I'll put my hand up and say I'm wrong. But, form in round 21, 22, 23 has been poor. To then flick a switch and win 4 finals in a row, the odds are absolutely stacked against them. And without Josh Bruce, he makes Tim English a better player. He makes Aaron Norton a better player. Crushes Pax. I think he's a huge loss. So, no, I don't think they can win it.
Yeah. All righty. That concludes the show for the preview. And, of course, question for you truly, Tom. Thanks for joining the show. And go D's, eh?
Go D's. Thank you very much. You got a Richmond poster behind you that's just dropping down. So
it's fallen. It's fallen just like the team.
Well said. No, thanks for having me on, Blake. I'll chat to you soon.
No worries. See you, mate.